Want me to zoom on your face?
No, if you can see me, you're fine, okay? Alright. I want you all to think back to the last good live-action television show that you've seen. This could be anything from The Office to Law & Order. Now, think of how many of these shows came out in 2014 or 15. I'm sure the answer is most likely none. Honestly, I've got to say that modern day live action is on a constant downslope with no hope in sight. But there is one light in the darkness, and its name is animation. I've been looking around the alleys of the internet, and I've come to the conclusion that the best way to stop bad live action is to stop watching it, and substitute it with cartoons and animations. Today, I'm going to tell you why modern live action is in the gutter, the pros of voice acting versus live acting, the high rate of live action failure, how they both set their scene, and how animations are lower budgeted. First, let's talk about the fallacies and limitations of live action and where cartoons improve upon their formulas. Live action today is low quality and very difficult to make successful. Let's talk about why. Let's start with the very first bad rendition of live action, which is modern day sitcoms. According to an article by IndieWire, which was published in June 11th of 2014, by Ben Travers, over 350 scripted television shows aired in 2014 alone. I couldn't find anything on how many AAA cartoons were released in the year, but I can tell you that the number is far lower than 350. Because of the mass production of these sitcoms, a large majority of them fall below the average of TV. Also, because of the mass production, hundreds of low-quality actors found work, which is good in theory, but in practice, most of them aren't near the actors that they claim to be. Because of this big surge of scripted live action, within the past few years, another kind of show became popular, short skit shows and video reel shows. For example, Tosh.0, Ridiculousness, Key and Peele, or the new show Inside Amy Schumer. While these shows have great opportunities to their host, a majority of the time, their quality is low. This is basically capitalizing off of other people's content by commenting on it, which is a nice idea, but we have a place called YouTube where this happens far more. These shows, while popular, are a bad example of cinema, whether the normal public sees this or not. In two different articles by the site Cheat Sheet, respectively by Michelle Rigaldo and Jacqueline Sahajian, in January and June of 2015, they listed the 9 worst shows of 2014 and 10 most shaded shows of all time. And guess what? All of the shows listed were live action. Alright, we get it. Live action in modern times, is rather low quality. But what makes animation better? Well, for one, voice acting is far easier and far superior. In comparison, voice acting is a simpler medium with a lot of better qualities. Compared to live acting, voice acting is done in a studio with near infinite retries. Live acting is done in a studio, but while both voice-over actors and live action actors are both on clock, when an actor has to go through multiple scenes, they usually get rather annoyed. When compared to a voice actor, they just have to re-say the phrase multiple times. In the article, Live Action versus Animation, published in June of 2014, Movie Maker's author Steve Moore said that animation requires more expertise because voice acting requires a lot of vocal talent as well, and it requires that animation has to be put over the voice, so if you can't really reshoot it when it's done. When one chooses to voice act, they have to have normal acting skills, but it requires a lot of vocal talent as well, meaning that most good voice actors they have a lot of talent compared to sitcoms and other live action shows where the quality of acting can majorly vary. Alright, so animation has voice acting, but why are there less cartoons than sitcoms than live action? Simple. The rate of failure is high for sitcoms compared to cartoons. For an example of the rate of failure, I turn to the New York Times. In an article by Brian Stelter in May of 2012, he said Fox commissioned 15 new pilots, which just means 15 new shows, and only 3 of those shows live to see a second season. While they do sometimes come up with a lot of gold, a lot of bad shows, which is what Fox is known for, also surface. These shows tend to annex their audiences mainly to teenagers or adults, while cartoon audiences are diverse. Alright, so live action is losing so far, right? Let's further this loss by explaining how live action fails to set a scene as well as animation and how that impacts the budget. In any live action show, be it sitcom or drama or whatever, live acting requires a set of some kind, whereas in animations and cartoons, the only limitation is one's imagination. This brings up the big question of budgeting. Live action movies and TV shows tend to have far higher budget needs because of their sets and having to pay actors and everyone else on the set of the movie. According to an article on RealMarketer.com, Dr. Manroop Takar, he says animation's costs are far fewer than live action because of the amount of people needed for a live action set to work. Besides money problems, live action also has another limit, the limit of imagination. When it comes to a set, or even on location filming, live action has severe limits. If a live action show wants to film somewhere, 9 times out of 10, they have to get permission and maybe even pay the landowner. Animation, however, is only limited to one's imagination. In an article on boldcontentvideo.com posted in 2015, the author Jonathan Savage weighs on the pros and cons of animation versus live action. In this, he says basically what I just did. Imagination's the only limit. And that any form of created shot, like an explosion or a space scene, would be outrageously expensive to do in live action. Since animation is limitless, the possibilities are quite literally endless for any cartoon. In the end, animation will always be a superior medium to live action. The possibilities are infinite. The acting styles are far easier and better quality. They tend to survive the one-season death of most shows. They're much cheaper, and they have no limits when it comes to design. So I hope I've left you all with a lasting impression of animations. And hopefully the next time you turn on your television, you'll choose an animation or cartoon instead of a bad sitcom. Now, as they say in the media industry, that's a wrap.